The Blue Jays find themselves in a familiar position that they were in last offseason. They didn't get the top free agent, which was Shohei Ohtani, and this year it was Juan Soto. So they're now in this position where they have to chase, and they have to chase quickly because the notable free agents after Soto have already started to leave the free agency board. They're signing on with other teams, and the Blue Jays had all their eggs in the Soto basket yet again. So we'll break down some targets and the reports that the Blue Jays have been linked to on this episode of Jays Digest. Welcome in, everybody, to Jays Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And here we are, deja vu. It's two off seasons in a row where the Blue Jays tried to get the number one free agent and they failed to do so. Whether you want to believe that the Jays were in on Soto or not, whether you want to believe they actually had a chance at acquiring his services, that's totally up to you. I'm not here to sway you in one direction or the other, but the Blue Jays now have to fight an uphill battle and they have to address multiple holes on their roster, which we will address in this video. But before we get into any of the targets and any of that, I want to let you know that a large percentage of you who are watching these videos are not subscribed to the channel, and all the drama is over for the most part, the Soto drama, but there's still a lot of free agents left on the board and a much deeper class than it was a season ago. So let's wait and see on the Blue Jays front. Let's see what they have to offer to us fans in terms of addressing those the lack of a roster that they have, but still it's not going to be an easy task, and a lot needs to be done. And one guy that we were talking about, Jordan Romano, he's off the board as well. He's signed on with the Phillies, so here we go. Here we go. It's going to be a tough one for the Blue Jays and a lot of work to do this offseason.
Yeah, Soto's off the board, and like you mentioned, he got paid a lot. We also have some insight on the exact amount of money that they offered him, and you might want to look away a little bit, Peter, because it's not exactly what we obviously wanted to hear. But before we get into that, a bunch of different reports came out. So you have one here from John Morosi. This dropped about 2 hours ago. It said, "I think Toronto is going to be the most aggressive team on Anthony Santander," and we've both kind of been on the side of he's probably going to be a Blue Jay. I've been saying that now for the past, I think, month. Yeah, about a month now since offseason really started to pick up. And following, I want to Shi Davidi reported as well. I want to give some light onto this. Right after the Soto signing, this is what Shi Davidi dropped. You can read the whole article. There's a lot of other things there. But he said, extension talks regarding Vladdy are a matter of New Year at this point, leaving the Jays to seek some significant upgrades for lacking roster in free agency and through trades. One industry source expected them to pivot to Max Fried and Anthony Santander, while 2 weeks ago they met with Corbin Burns, another free agent that is represented by Scott Boras, who is sure to redirect the Soto suitors to his other clientele here. So that's two reporters in the last 12 hours, really 18 hours, linking the Jays to Santander. John Morosi seems pretty heavily saying the Jays are going to be aggressively pursuing. Of course, I had a video earlier today with reports saying that the Jays are going to give Corbin Burns the most money available, which you can get your thoughts on as well. But I want to hear your thoughts here on, of course, we'll have another video on Max Fried at some point, but Anthony Santander seems to be the guy that is most likely to come to the Toronto Blue Jays, at least in my eyes. And it seems like the Jays are agreeing with my sentiment here, and that it seems that he's going to be a Blue Jay. I just think it makes the most sense, especially given the cost, but it can't be the only move that they do.
Yeah, I just hope that they do something because we can't have another off season of them just dumpster diving and trying to get bargain reclamation projects. It's just not the way that this team is going to compete. And especially with Juan Soto out of the American League now, I think the entire league is wide open. We saw the Cleveland Guardians make it all the way to the ALCS. We saw a lot of surprise teams make the playoffs last year, most notably the 86 win Detroit Tigers. So there were a lot of surprises last year, and I don't think anyone had the AL Central being the most dominant division in the league on their bingo cards. So it just shows you that the talent is on the National League side of things. Obviously, if you get to the World Series, that's a whole different story, and you worry about the matchup that you'll have there when you get there. But the Jays haven't won a single playoff game in the tenure of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bichette. So the way I see it is that there's a golden opportunity here for you to make some noise in the American League. Sure, you didn't get Juan Soto and you didn't get the number one guy in free agency, but Anthony Santander is available, Max Fried is available, and Corbin Burns is also available. But those guys are going to come with a pretty hefty price tag. I think Santander is going to be a lot more digestible, which is why it makes sense for the Blue Jays to pursue him, and even a Teoscar Hernandez, which you see on the screen right there. But will that reunion make sense? Will Teoscar want to come back? Does he not feel slighted by the Blue Jays having traded him away to the Mariners? I don't know. That could be something in play there as well. So there are some options. And I don't consider any of these guys dumpster diving just because they're not making $700 million. Dollars. It doesn't mean they aren't good players and they're not going to fill some holes that you have on your roster. Like the Blue Jays have a lot of work to do, and we assume that more or less they have around $40 million dollars of annual revenue to play with. So if you get Anthony Santander, there goes half of that. And what are you going to do with the other half of that? Or are you going to be able to go over budget considering that the American League is wide open? And with a few major additions, you can get yourself back into contention and you could maybe even challenge for the division crown because I don't know if the Orioles are that threatening to me anymore. I don't know if the Yankees are as threatening either with the departure of Soto, and the Rays and Red Sox, I just don't think they're quite there yet either. So the Blue Jays have an opportunity to win this division and to go far in the playoffs if they get in. But in order for them to get in, they cannot run it back with the same roster that we saw close out the year last year. That was horrible. That was a terrible roster, and they played above some of their expectations. We saw guys outperform some of their metrics and whatnot, but not to pick on Ernie Clement or Davis Schneider or Joey Loperfido, but I don't know if they're starting caliber players on a playoff team.
Yeah, you got to kind of temper expectations now, but you also can't discount the fact that if they go out and they get Santander, they go out and get Burns, or both of them, that's a bad offseason just because they missed out on Juan Soto. You can see the projected contract, 4 years, 80 million, solid. Like if he probably gets pushed to 4 years, 90 million. Profar is a guy that's on a lot of people's radars. He has a significant increase in bat speed last year compared to his previous season. So there's a lot of different options here between the Blue Jays. And I saw an interesting tweet about Santander. They need him more than the other teams involved. They have DH at bats available. He can also play outfield. He's a switch hitter. They need power. So I think ultimately it's a perfect fit. And Peter, as you look at the current construction of the team, I think Zach Marshall tweeted this, so shout out to him, but like the third base is still up in the air to a degree. You have left field, where you assume if you're going to put somebody in there, it's Joey Loperfido. Third base, probably Ernie Clement. You don't have an ace at this point. You'd factor if you want to put Kevin Gausman as the ace and put Yuri Rodriguez as the fourth or fifth starting pitcher, sure. And then you have a glaring hole in the bullpen still. So, you can see at the bottom, there's guys like Aurelvis Martinez, there's Alan Rodin, Jake Bloss who compete for a starting pitching spot. But when it comes to the Jays needing one of these three guys, I don't know if there's a more obvious fit for the Blue Jays than Anthony Santander. And even despite their pitching in theory not being a problem the past couple of years, they desperately also now need a starting pitcher. It doesn't have to be an ace, although it would be an ace, and the one guy who wouldn't have been an ace would have fit in Luis Severino is off the board. So they have some work to do, and I think ultimately they're going to get it done here with Santander.
Yeah, and I like what you said there. It doesn't have to be an ace. I'm totally comfortable with Kevin Gausman being my opening day starter, or maybe even José Berríos, considering the way that he pitched last year. The one thing that all of those guys have in common is that they eat innings, and you can rely on Gausman, Berríos, Bassett to probably be in the upper 180s or maybe even close to 200 by season's end. They don't miss starts. They're durable and they're very consistent. Are they ace caliber? In the case of Gosman, not anymore, I don't think, but he was an ace when he first came over. And Barrios, I don't think he's an ace either, but those guys are fine as number two starters or number three starters. And if you have a collection of number three starters in your rotation that give you a chance to win every fifth day, I think that's good enough. And yeah, so for that reason, for me, Nick, and considering the budget that they have to work with, the $40 million figure or more so around there that we've been hearing about, I wouldn't be in on Corbin Burns or Max Fried. And it may be tough for us to swallow that because those are probably the two best players that are still available on the free agent market. But uh, if you look at that rotation, I think that's arguably their biggest strength heading into next season. You obviously can't have too many, you can't have too many pitchers. We know that. That's been established. And the grind of a 162 game regular season, you need as many guys in your rotation as possible that can fill in a pinch. But I feel comfortable with those four guys and then maybe a minor addition that again, eats innings and that is able to give you a chance to win every fifth day. So I'd love Max Fried or Corbin Burns if they give themselves the ability to go over that budget that they've clearly stated is what they're working with. But if they're not able to go over that, then I'm saving all of that money for a legitimate bullpen arm and an offensive piece or two because those are the two glaring needs on this roster in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather him get hitters anyways, but maybe Alex Bregman's another guy that's been on the Jays' radar. So if
Maybe.
they have to pivot, go that way. One quick note before we wrap up, talking about that budget. About an hour ago, Heyman mentioned the Jays were at around $760 million. And Jeff Passan 3 minutes ago, I just see the tweet here on my monitor. The Blue Jays, quote, offered a lot of money. So, Peter, I think ultimately they were right there with the Mets when it comes to money. We're seeing some reports basically that for a while Cohen was at 720, and I think the Jays were at 760 the whole time, and that he probably would have been a Blue Jay if Cohen didn't step up and push up to what ultimately ended up being upwards of $800 million. But again, you don't know about the deferrals. He has a full no trade clause on the New York
Well,
Mets.
with incentives, it's
And
800.
it has escalators up to 800. Who knows if the Jays would have matched that, if they would have matched the no trade clause, if they would have matched the non-deferrals, because we know the Yankees and Mets both had that. So any final thoughts before we never speak about this Juan Soto situation again? Because I'm going to just take it out of my memory.
Look, I just don't think it's as devastating as some people make it out to be. It's a lot of money, and he's a great player, but that is not going to age well, that contract. And we mentioned it, Nick, how there had to be a hard line somewhere. I think 760 was the line that the Yankees and the Blue Jays established. Good on Cohen for going over that and even giving Soto the chance to make it to $800 million. But it's a ridiculous amount of money. And some players are worth an exceptional budget in the case of Ohtani, but I don't think Soto was worth that exceptional budget. And he's a great player, don't get me wrong. I would have liked him on the team, but 760 is a ton. And I think the Blue Jays did enough. I'm not angry at the fact that they didn't go to 800 million and try to go toe to toe with Steve Cohen. At the end of the day, he wanted the most amount of money and clearly he was comfortable in New York and he wanted to continue over there. So there were a lot of factors playing against you in this whole thing. And ultimately, he's going to be a New York Met for what we think is going to be the rest of his career, but you never know because this guy's already joining his fourth team in his sixth year in the big leagues, or now going to be seventh year in the big leagues. So I say it's not as devastating as they make it out to be. It would have been great to have a generational talent on your team, but still, I think you have one in your backyard, and you'd be better off to just sign him before he hits free agency. Because if this is the way that the new contracts are headed in, if this is the direction that the new age baseball is headed in, I think the Blue Jays are going to have some stiff competition for their homegrown star, Vladdy, next offseason.
Yeah, and the Jays offered him $1 billion, so he declined $1 billion.
It's
Must be
legit,
nice.
man.
I mean, he still
It's
got it. But he got
legit.
more than that with the New York Mets. That'll wrap it up. Let us know down below on your thoughts on the Soto stuff, as well as, of course, the Anthony Santander. See you later.